Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Making It After 40 podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I'm an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. Welcome back, everybody. I think I'm finding my rhythm right now with a 3-week cycle. I would love to bring it back to 2 weeks, but for right now, 3 weeks is what's working for me and keeps the show going. We have probably about 3 more episodes left of this season, including this one. And then I'm going to take a little hiatus to get back to some writing projects that I've been pushing off. And then hopefully I'll be back closer to the end of the year with a few more episodes, or, who knows, I might just wait until next year in 2025 and bring it back with more consistent releases. Our guest in this episode is Carrie-Ann Pishnak. If you ever took a class at Second City Hollywood, then I'm certain you know Carrie-Ann. Carrie-Ann is an actor, improviser, teacher, and now executive director of the Youth Academy of Dramatic Arts. Carrie-Ann shares with us how she's been able to make a living as an artist starting back as early as her 20s. She shares with us some tools that she used, such as saying yes, building a network, and choosing to pick projects and jobs that allowed her to collaborate with other artists. Carrie-Ann has lived such an interesting creative life that has allowed her to cross the intersection of stability, art, and business. I found our conversation enlightening and inspiring, and I hope you will too. And with that, please enjoy Carrie-Ann and I chatting it up. I do feel like this particular interview has been like so long in the making.
I
I'm so glad that we finally were able to like have the stars align. And, yeah.
I know. It's been busy. I mean, in good ways and bad ways, in all the ways.
Yeah. If it wasn't like work or, like events, then it was like, sickness
Life.
or,
Mhm.
whatever.
Totally.
Okay, so today I have Carrie-Ann Pishnak. Am I saying Pishnak right? I don't know if that's how you say it.
Pishnak, just like just ish. Yeah, Pishnak.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Carrie-Ann, the way that I know Carrie-Ann is through Second City. She was, if you ever went there, then you know who she is. She's this bright-faced, super fun ball of energy that would be floating around Second City, and of course, like the head of the really awesome improv show, which has she has now evolved into the Rockin
Yeah,
Awesome,
baby.
or it's just Rockin Improv Show. Rockin Awesome.
Rockin
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. You could do all my intros.
Yeah.
I love it. You're great.
It's
just before I walk in a room, just Lisa, you go in there first. You go in there first. Say something nice about me.
I mean, I will say, like, back in the day when I would go there and I would see you in the office and stuff, you were always just like such a light and so happy and like, oh, who's that?
Oh,
She seems
thank
nice.
you.
Yeah, and we
That's
never, of
nice.
course, we never got to work together. Like, yeah, but
I usually didn't. By the time you went through the program, I was the director of marketing and an associate producer, and also on the development team. So I didn't really have a ton to do with students anymore, because even like the marketing side, I would send an office person in to do stuff. So it really, I didn't really have a lot to do with students at that point. And I was just working on, premium shows and shows for Chicago, whatever they wanted me to do, Toronto, Chicago, Los Angeles, just be bopping around.
Yeah. That's cool though. I mean, like, it's neat that you got to like be in the kind of the office, the corporate side of it all, and like run a business basically.
Yeah, it was all the things. It was like magical and corporate and a creative outlet and my community. my hobbies, my passions, my friends, my peers.
Yeah.
It was all the things. It was all the things. A little bit too much of all the things, if I'm being honest. Like, so all the eggs in one basket. You got to
Yeah.
diversify.
Yeah. And then I'm sure that was part of the hurt when it all like switched up and
Oh yeah.
and everything fell apart, at least
Yeah. I
out
mean,
here in Los Angeles.
yeah. Well, when we went into lockdown, we went from like, what we do best, which is improvising,
Mhm.
right? We took all of our stuff and tried to figure out how to put it online. And suddenly the highest people in our teaching and development staff were all taking all of our curriculum and just reworking everything and taking turns going into mock classrooms and saying like, okay, we're all of these high level people, we're all going to be your students and you work us through something that you think might work. So we were just workshopping everything, which was great because it was so stressful. None of us knew if we were going to get sick, who's going to
Yeah.
perish. Like, I mean, these were real world
Oh, yeah.
problems and we didn't know the answers to them. So it was incredibly complicated and Zoom didn't do all the things it does now. So we were asking it to do things that were not technologically, it wasn't
Yeah.
capable of it. So we were really testing the waters on everything and stretching its limits. So, but it honestly was also one of the best times because we were just making shit up.
That's
We were improvising, we were taking everything and making shit up.
That's really cool. Yeah, that was in
Yeah.
general for life, it was like there was so much opportunity for innovation and like just to look at things from a different perspective and how can we make this work when we were just so used to like it
Yeah.
always there was only one
Yeah.
way to do it.
How can we make this
Mhm.
work? Totally. And it was all, we call it outside the box thinking, but it was really inside the box
Yeah.
thinking. Like, how can we make this work inside this box? And I was also doing that at Cal Arts. I was teaching at
Oh,
Cal
yeah.
Arts and trying to take all of that curriculum. Mark Rosek and I were teaching at Cal Arts, and we were taking all of that curriculum, and they were sending our students home,
Uh-huh.
right? So our students were from all over the world. So then they were zooming into our classes, and we didn't know where they were. And that's when you really started to understand how secondary education can sometimes be a lifeline
Mm.
to people in a way that you don't know where people come from, what kind of home life they have or had,
Yeah.
what kind of support system they had or didn't have, right? So the students would start, popping up on camera and I'd be like, where are you right
Yeah.
now? Like, tell me, I don't understand where you are. Or I'd say like, um, Rachel, are you outside your window? Are you on the roof
Yeah.
right now? Are you on the roof? And she'd go like, yeah. I'm like, can you please turn your camera so I can see what you see? And it's not even a flat roof. It'd be like on this crazy ass A-frame going down. I was like, okay, can you please go inside?
Oh my
your,
God.
I don't feel comfortable where you are right. I don't feel like you're not
Yeah.
safe. But the reason, Rachel would go out there is because that was the place that she felt like she could speak
Yeah.
freely, so you just don't know what the pandemic did to people. Sometimes being home with your loved ones wasn't the safest place to
Yeah.
be, right? So it was fascinating to navigate everyone's mental health, physical health, wherever they ended
Yeah,
up.
I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of teachers went through that, like even with the elementary schools, and a lot of elementary schools were able to give Chromebooks to students, but still
Mhm.
not every student had internet at home. And then, there's
Yeah.
I'm sure you've met people or people in Los Angeles who have, living situations where it's like grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, their own mom or dad, and all the cousins are all living in a 2-bedroom place. And now they're trying to do
Yep.
school in a 2-bedroom place, Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even the opposite. Sometimes it's just a single
Mhm.
mom. right? Single mom who's got several kids at home and she's trying to work and do
Oh
her
yeah.
work. And she's got a kid on a laptop doing a computer and a toddler running around and a couple animals. It's everyone was living sometimes their nightmare,
Yeah.
right? You're just like, holy hell, all of my support is
Yeah.
gone. And we didn't know. We didn't know if we could get in each other's
Yeah. That
spaces.
was a really tough time. I know for my own my kid was 10 when they shut down. And so 5th grade was all at
Mm,
home. And that was
yeah.
really tough. Fortunately, I was not working at the time because I still had an infant. So it was like,
Mm, yeah.
that I think that's the only way we survived because we have other friends where both parents were working and they would like take turns where one of them would get up and work from like, I don't know, like 5 to 2 or whatever, or like 4 to 1. And then the other one would switch and like work like 2 to 10 or
Yeah.
whatever, you know. Is it Yeah,
So
it's tough.
challenging. So challenging. And just to take, like really awesome improv show, we made that an online show. So it was like I was in my living room producing that show from my living room. It just looked like I could land a plane in my living room. It was just like my setup right now is 3
Yeah.
monitors. And back then it was just I had my like big screen TV hooked up with an HDMI cable and like all these and my podcast mic out. Like we had we had so much. I was driving green screens around town to my actors, and again, we were like masked up and like passing it through like half rolled down
Oh.
car windows, just trying to get green screens to people, right? And it was so that we could put our logo behind them, and they could stand it. We could do the show, and so it was just like producing a TV show every week, and it was so much fun and so hard.
I would love to go back and understand like how you started on this creative journey because like you had already said, you talked about how you were in the corporate office at Second City, or not, and you were
Hmm.
like in the marketing director and you were kind of on that side and no longer teaching. How did you get started with Second City and with performing and your creative life in general?
Yeah. Whoosh. I mean, I feel like I've lived a million lives up until now. So I went to, just performing in high school and junior high, just getting my feet wet in like, oh, this is fun. I like this. And, and then just went to a state school because I was putting myself through college and I was the first person in my family to go to college and didn't really have any guidance or anyone to the word Pell Grants wasn't it didn't
Yeah.
exist. No one was telling me like, oh, here are all these, grants you put in for. Here's all of these resources you should look at. There was no one to guide
Yeah.
me. So I was just making this shit up and I was like, oh, I want to study theater.
Mhm.
So I did community college for a little bit because those were classes that I could afford, which meant that I was doing theater with the community college, which honestly was just phenomenal. It was such a
Yeah.
in-depth community. Everyone was doing everything, and there were all of these really beautifully talented, extremely well-versed, well-traveled, well-educated people that I was, around when I was 18 years old, just freshly graduated. So they were a big influence on me.
And
And then
where
when
was this?
this was
Oh,
Vegas.
okay.
This was Las Vegas. Yeah. And so then as soon as I had like my basics, I was like, okay, I can't afford to do all of my college at the university. So as soon as I got my basics out of the way, my English and like histories and that kind of basics, I transferred over to UNLV into their theater
Mm-hmm.
department, which is a phenomenal theater department because it is a performance town. It is incredibly easy to make money in Las Vegas. I half grew up there, and I don't recommend raising children there. It's not a great place for kids. I certainly don't recommend being a young woman
Yeah.
there. It is not a place that, inspires confidence in one's body. It is a lot of vice. So, and it definitely is a place that marginalizes women. So it is tough being a young woman and feeling good about yourself there. But it is because it has so many shows and film and TV, commercial work, so much convention work. It was nonstop, 24 hours a day. You had an opportunity to perform. So going to UNLV meant that all of my instructors were working actors. Everyone was in, a show, or they were, one of the performance kids, or they were doing TV and film. Like, everyone was doing everything.
wow.
So that meant that the show kids back then, and probably still now, I don't know, they had what they referred to as friends and family auditions. So if you knew somebody who was in a show and it was time for auditions, there would be a whole round of friends and family auditions in which that you could bring in anyone that you knew that was related to you or that you were friends with and you felt people should see, and you would do the friends and family auditions, and then they would do like a cattle call or whatever. So I got cast in several shows while I was still going to college. And I was just like, trying to use that inner voice of like, finish your degree, finish your degree. But I was working. And so I was just like, come on, girl, just finish your degree. It was great. I was teaching preschool to put myself through college. And so I started teaching at a super young age, and I loved it.
Did you? I think that's got to be like the hardest job.
It
God
is.
bless all the
I
preschool teachers,
agree.
because I think I know what it was
I
like with
agree.
just one. Oh my goodness.
You know what? It was so great because it was like having my own little audience, because the preschool classes, it's like performing. You have to constantly keep their attention while you're teaching them. So even things like, I used to be able to read The Night Before Christmas as a monologue
Okay.
because I had done it so many times. And then I thought, oh, you know what? I can turn this into a monologue where somebody else can hold the book and I can do puppets and props and all of this and act it out for them. So I used to have it memorized and I used to perform it for them.
Aw.
And, they would all get involved, and I'd give props to, like physical props to one child, and the other child would hold a book, and there would be interactive noises and very much like going to a Second City show. Like, it was all very interactive. So it just, and they're so dang cute and I loved them. So, but that's how I put myself through college until like maybe the last year or so, where I auditioned for shows, got in, and I was going to school during the day and sometimes working the shows at night, sometimes doing my own shows at night, as part of the performance track. But it was always good money, and they always gave you health
Oh
insurance,
wow.
and you were working, sometimes I would do daytime shifts at the Excalibur, and then I would like pack up my stuff, and then I would go across literally kitty corner and cross the street to the Excalibur, and I would do nighttime shows at the Excalibur. So I'd be working from like 10 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the morning the
Oh
next
my
day.
gosh.
And then I'd drive home and go through the Krispy Kreme drive-through and get donuts and then go home and pass out. Like, so it was great. It was great to be young and have the energy to do it all and really thoroughly cut my teeth on so many different types of educational performance opportunities and money-making performance opportunities, which was honestly spoiled me a little bit to not even be out of school and have health insurance and a freaking living wage. Like, I was living and paying my rent and doing the things I wanted to do. I was a working actor, and it was really just I was spoiled. I was spoiled.
Yeah. That's so cool. God, what a great
And then,
opportunity.
and then eventually I moved here. it was so great. And then eventually I moved here, and I was getting cast in a million variety shows, which weren't here. So I was placed with a production company that was I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of it right now. Michael Mills Productions, and they have variety shows all over the place. And so they just kept casting me and sending me out in different shows. And I would just keep coming back. And I had a place in Vegas and a place here,
Right.
and I wasn't
Yeah.
living alone. I was like renting rooms and stuff. And then I would do like, I did a 6 months on the cruise ship, and just all the things. And then I came back from the cruise ship with just a crap ton of money saved up. And I wanted to go to BADA, the British American Drama Academy, and really kind of hone my classical stuff. So I auditioned and I got in, and it took all of my money to pay for that tuition, and studied and came back to LA. And then I immediately auditioned for a Shakespeare show based in Glendale and got cast. And then just started my life for like a decade doing Shakespeare.
Oh, wow.
Just nonstop Shakespeare. And I, again, working actor, paying my bills and living my best life, just doing the Bard.
Wow.
Like, so much fun. So much fun. And that is where I met Jennifer Hoyt, who she was the executive director of Second City Hollywood, and then eventually moved to Chicago and was the VP of production in Chicago. And now I think she's the director of special projects for Steppenwolf in Chicago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a big
So
deal.
that's where I met Jen. And we were doing Shakespeare, like, two fools, just like, being giddy and doing like Helena and Hermia in Midsummer, and Viola and Olivia in Twelfth Night. Like, we were just, having the best time. And then we started producing together, and we were doing full Shakespeare festivals together.
Oh, wow. Did you ever get involved with the one in the Griffith Park?
Oh, no. No,
Okay.
I never did that one,
Okay.
but I love it.
Yeah.
I did go see it.
Yeah.
And then she started working for Second City Hollywood, because the woman who ran it way back then, she went to college with. And so she, was pulling all her people together that she knew were very capable people. So
Yeah.
Jen was working there for a whole year, and we were still doing Shakespeare. She wanted to go on vacation, and she's like, "Hey, Carrie-Ann, well, can you come? There's no one else that I know that can do this. Can you come and, just do my job for me for a week while I go on vacation?"
Yeah.
And I'd never had a desk job before, and I'd certainly done like temp jobs here and there. But I'd never done like a for real desk job. And she was like, "Can you do this?" And I was like, "Hell no. That sounds awful. No, thank you. Please go find someone else. Love you, but not me, please. That's not my jam."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Okay, cool. But as like good friends do, I'm like, "Go find someone else. But in a pinch, if you just like can't find anyone else, circle back." And sure enough, like 2-3 weeks later, she circled back. She's like, "Carrie-Ann, please. I just want to go on vacation."
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay." And I sat, and back then, oh my God, Lisa, you wouldn't recognize Second City Hollywood back then. It looked like, we used to call it an insane asylum. It just looked like something out of The Shining.
Yeah.
It was just unpretty. It had no air conditioning.
Oh, God.
We were all like in just in as little clothing as acceptable,
Yeah.
hair up, fans, like oscillating fans, just trying to not sweat. And I was in Jen's office in the back, just sweating, doing like signing people up for classes, and doing like payroll, and like, oh, it's just awful. And she came back and she's like, "Did you like it?" I was like, no, I hated it. But I was good at it. I'm like a capable human. And that was just my toe in the water. And they just kept asking me back and saying like, hey, will you do this? Hey, will you do that? Hey, will you do this? And eventually I was working, part-time for them on the reg. And then they just kept taunting me like, hey, if you come and you do full time, we'll give you this and we'll give you that. And they just kept upping the ante.
Yeah.
And, you get sucked in with free classes and health insurance and a regular paycheck and a 401k. And you just,
Yeah.
the carrots, they just keep pulling you in with the carrots. And that's how I ended up at Second City. It was just a slow dip into wasn't because I was like, oh, I want to go study at Second City. I was just slowly pulled in,
Yeah.
month after month. So that was 2007 that I started working there. And I went through, if you work there, you're required to go through through the improv program.
Oh, you are? Okay.
You're required to. And they're not interested in having anyone in the building that doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so you're not required to go through the conservatory. Good Lord, that's a 2-year program and that's a major commitment. And you have to really love what you want to do. But you are required to go through the improv program, which is a 3-level program at the time. And then it's up to you. So I did that program. And then of course you I drank the Kool-Aid. I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to be doing.
Yep.
And auditioned for the conservatory and got in, went through that program, and then went through the long form program. And all through that, Jen and I started crafting away the youth program because we had taught in so many different arenas. We were like, we should have a youth program here. So we started crafting that and building that out, and that became a really big program over the years.
Yeah.
So that was, and then eventually I was the director of marketing and producing and on the development team, and we were going around to different studios. So it was like Funk and Warzeka and other people, I think Ithamar too, and I'm trying to remember all the people that we were going into rooms and pitching different projects with. Yeah, it was so much fun. And then eventually they started pulling me into different locations and going out to Toronto to help with, certain things and coming out to Chicago. And then, I don't know if you were around when it was Undateable and then it became #DateMe. So that started in Hollywood and then went to Chicago for 2 or 3 years. So it was in Hollywood for 3 years. And I think in Chicago for 2 or 3 years. And then it went to off-Broadway for a hot second. And that was a really fun journey with Robin Norris. And she's such a creative joy of a human being. So that was great because it was so interesting when you think about it back then, because front of house experiences and interactive experiences, they just weren't a thing back then. And I'm going to use my quote fingers, my quote unquote, like real theater. So social media wasn't a thing. Interactive experiences weren't a thing. And Second City was shut down when it came to that kind of like social media. They didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Interactive experiences, that wasn't part of who they felt their brand was. And so it was, but Second City Hollywood was its own thing. And we carved out a developmental stage for the company where we could make big choices, take big swings, and also fail big without any huge repercussions. So we took big chances and we were creating front of house experiences and doing social media stuff. And so that by the time Undateable moved to Chicago, we had it down. And so it was hard and fun to get them on board. It was a real challenge to get them on board to do what we were doing in Hollywood over in Chicago. And I'm not sure that it was received incredibly well by everyone over there when we landed. And we're like, we were just so jolly and joyful to be there and take this nugget that was built by all of these really beautiful, talented people and try and replicate it there, but also develop it into something bigger and something better. But that whole like social media front of house interactive experience was it was real. It was testing some people.
Yeah.
It was real. It was and there were a couple of higher ups who were just like, no, thank you.
Oh,
But
wow.
we had some people on our side that were higher, than the people who didn't like it. So
Yeah. I mean,
it
why
it
not?
was a journey.
Why not try something new and different? But there's definitely, you get the sense like straight away that there's a gap there, or that there was a gap between Hollywood and Chicago, where
Yeah.
there was like a
Yeah. And
lesser than, we were the stepchild, or the, whatever.
yeah, I think that in some ways it was good for us.
Yeah.
Um, in some ways, like a lot of the students, I think, and teachers felt that way. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that in the ways that it was good for us was that they kind of ignored us. And
Mm.
that sounds bad, but in truth, it meant that we took this stage that was only meant for students, right?
Yeah.
It was just a stage for students to perform what they were learning in class on.
Yeah.
And then at the time, Mark Warzeka was the associate artistic director. And we were like, well, we have this stage, right? And the students all performing on it. And all of these alumni were landing in LA, and they wanted, a place to develop or
Yeah.
perform or just hang out with their friends and do a show. So we were just like, well, let's just start building out this nightly show. And it was real small at first, and then it got a little bigger. And if Chicago didn't want us to do um, a main stage, like they weren't
Right.
going to let us be a main stage. So we decided to create our own label, and it
Yeah.
became what you knew, which was premium shows, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
mainstay show, but it was a premium show. And that meant something. That meant you
Mm-hmm.
got the brand behind it, and we had a budget for each show. And
Yeah.
if you made over a certain amount each show, the cast got a kickback of that, and they got to split it. So it was the closest we could get. And that was something that we carved out because we were successful and they weren't paying attention. And if you couldn't ignore us because we were having a really good time and creating something that was unusual, and we were doing some weird crap,
Yeah.
and it was successful, and you can't ignore success.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something magical about that. Like, giving you guys had the freedom to do things like you just said. You wouldn't have been given those opportunities to try that
Yeah.
sort of stuff in Chicago. And so it opened doors to new ways of innovating
Yeah.
and new ways of being on stage. Josh Funk would always um reference, that Key and Peele started out like they just
Yes.
needed a space to try out
They
like a sketch
did.
show, and then that's how they were
They
able to
did.
pitch their sketch show. Like, that's so cool that you guys had that
Yeah.
space to offer to them to try it
Such
out.
delightful humans.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone was everyone was doing their own thing. So even Josh and I shared a wall, right? So on the other side of my wall was his office, and he had just his soundboards in there and all his recording equipment. He's such a gifted composer and musician, and talented singer,
Yeah.
performer, all the things, and just a really good human being. And he would do he did like all the music for Key and Peele
Mhm.
and for shoot, I can't remember the name of the other shows that he was working on, but you would hear him in the other room, and sometimes it would drive me crazy because he would just be working on the same sound loop like over and over and over, and I'd go
Yeah.
funk, and he'd be like, sorry, I'll put my headphones on. I'm like, thank you. And other times, he'd be working on Wabbit. Matt Craig was working on. It
Oh.
was like a revamp of Bugs Bunny. It was at the time
Uh-huh.
it was called Wabbit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and working on cartoons. And he'd be like, all these people would come in, these stars would come in and lay down some tracks, and then we'd all come in there, and he's like, I need somebody to come and listen to this, and we'd all go in there and listen to what he
Aw.
was working on. So it was just a revolving door of cool people, talented, lovely, wonderful conversations and human beings and
Yeah.
artistic process all the time. There was always something great going on.
That's really cool. I mean, like, that definitely, like, sounds like the dream, and, you mentioned, like, the pull of having the steady paycheck, but, like, you kinda got to have the both worlds because you got to, like, have
Yeah.
this creative expression and a steady paycheck, like, and insurance and, all
Yeah,
the like, a
it
401k.
was
Oh,
great.
who doesn't love a 401k?
Who doesn't love a 401k?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
that stuff
Second
is
City was great because
amazing.
they had a matching program, and so that was
Oh,
that
that's the
was that
best.
was really great. Yeah, and it was, and I was teaching in the youth program, and it was, doing and then doing the kids show, and
Yeah.
it was just it was great. And some, every person who's ever gone through the conservatory at Second City, which is for anyone listening who doesn't know, it's a 2-year program, and it's a grad program. It's a 2-year
Mhm.
program, and it's there's no one who comes through it who doesn't say, though I met some of my best friends.
Yeah.
Like everyone, like those, I'm still friends with,
Yeah.
Lonnie Shipman who was in my grad program, and she owns the Youth Academy of Dramatic Art. She co-owns it, and that's where I work right now.
Oh, wow.
And Jameson Scala was in my grad program, and he is still one of my best friends, and he's on the Jeff Lewis live show on Sirius Radio. And
Oh.
like we still Zoom and text and hang out, and it's just, I mean, it's always a love fest. You bond an incredible amount through all your vulnerability that you spill out together. It's
Oh,
just
for
just a
sure.
crazy creative process, and it's nothing but 2 years of vulnerability and trial and error.
Yeah, and like, even if it's not with the grad program, it's like with the other performers. I ended up being on a house team after the
Yeah,
conservatory and still friends with them. I've been to a couple weddings from like people that were, you know, I did conservatory with,
yeah.
um, meeting
There
babies. So
lots of Second City, like marriages, and
yeah,
lots of Second City babies.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty great.
So then, okay, so now Second City Hollywood is gone, and obviously you've continued
Yeah,
on with with the Rockin' Awesome Improv show. And I will say, just for the audience, this improv show is the most fun. It's the best.
thank
And you
you.
talked about the youth program. Like I took
Mhm.
my oldest to the youth program. We did a camp and
Yeah,
we did like the weekend improv shows, at least 1 or 2 sessions of that, and Felix loved it, had the best time, and,
it's the best.
yeah, and then, like, going just to see the improv show was so fun. Um, we ran into Patton Oswalt there with
Yes!
his
Oh my god,
kiddo,
he was
yeah.
his little girl, Alice,
Yeah.
was such a super fan, and we looked forward to them coming, because he was just constantly, like, he liked the show, but
Yeah.
he was just it's just such an endearing father to watch him just glow
Yes.
at his daughter. And
Yeah.
she was such a super fan of ours. And I remember her showing up one day with a cake, like, where you go
Oh.
to some of those places and you like decorate your own cake,
Uh-huh.
like a Color Me Mine, but for cake.
Uh-huh.
And they had gone to this cake making place, and he was like, okay, who do you want to bring it home? Do you want to, like, give it to somebody? And she said, I want to bring it and give it to the Really Awesome Improv show. And so
Oh.
she brought it to us, and we have this picture of the cast and Alice, and she's gifting us her cake that she made, that she was a mega super
Oh.
fan. And we had many of them, and it was great.
Yeah, yeah.
There are people who are still in the show who are original cast members. So that's since 2010.
Oh, wow.
Is when that show started.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's been
guessing, is that Pepper?
no
Oh,
Pepper, no Jameson Scala,
okay.
Rachel Crane. Trying to remember who the originals are. Myself. Um, I can't. And then there are people who are almost the original,
Yeah.
like Carrie Weisberg and Danny Lutman. And Pepper has been in it for a long time. So it just,
I remember Jose, wasn't it Jose Kane?
yes.
And-
Jose's still in it.
And Trevor. Trevor is a newer
Yes.
person.
There
but
were some
Trevor-
people who,
Yeah, he's great. He's so adorable.
there are some people who came in right. They got cast right when we went into lockdown. So we got cast like usually January, February, and then we go into a big rehearsal process, and then we slowly start to pepper them in a very protected spot with almost no intros or no intros at all, where they're just playing. And and so some people had just gotten like one show under their belt before we went into lockdown. So when we came back out of of lockdown, and it had been years since we'd played, and so we were just like trying to get back up on our feet and trying to, it was really hard to know to be funny. It was really hard to know it, because it wasn't just about us, right? It's about the kids. That show is 100% about making kids feel great and bringing kids up on stage and allowing them to be part of the magic and making them look good, and the social and emotional well-being of our kids. And the audience is a big, huge part of our show. But that meant we had to be in a good place, and getting all back together and trying to, we were all masked and we were all sitting in a big circle. And I was just like, hey, let's just get in a room. Let's just get in a room together and do whatever you feel okay doing. If you want to cry, if you want to keep your distance, if you whatever you feel safe and okay doing, let's just get in a room and be together and see what's next. And that was a pretty great day. That was a great day of just getting all together. And there were some tears and there was laughter, but the joy, that was just the first pebble in the water, and the ripples just kept going from there. So it was interesting to get us back on stage, and it's so rusty, just so rusty, but to get the joy back was healing and a great process to find the joy again. Yeah, we all had to find it again.
Yeah. But it's great that you bring that, because it's a service basically that you do for the kids and the families. That it's so hard to find some entertainment sometimes when you have young children, and that's a safe place that you can go and everybody's going to have a good time.
And I honestly think that because that show is of service, that is the reason why we were so capable of getting it back up on our feet, because it allowed us to not worry about ourselves. We knew we had to get it to a place that it was before. And we were doing 2 sold out shows a week, and we were had so many shows we were doing shows at the H Club for adults, and we were doing corporate shows, and we were doing festival shows in New Mexico, and we were just all over the place. 2 days before we went into lockdown, we were doing a corporate show out in a high rise for some hair company. And I was just showing somebody this picture the other day, because it pops up in my memories all the time, and Facebook, where it's just our whole cast in black show clothes, and we were doing this corporate show, and our big logo in the background, and Jerome Kurtenbach was our piano player, and Zoe Rubino was our tech person, and then a couple days later we were in lockdown, and I was like, bye-bye.
Oh.
So coming back was an interesting mental and emotional struggle to get us there. But honestly, the kids are the reason why it was easier than it probably would have been if it were just an adult show.
Yeah.
It was so great to get back and see the kids and
that's really
interact with them.
I just thought of this story that I think is worth sharing with you. The first show that we took my older child too. My older child is identifies with both he and she pronouns right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, assigned female at birth, but now uses he and she.
Hmm.
And the first time we went to go see the show, I wish I could remember the person's name, but there was a person in the cast who had short hair, and it wasn't
Hmm.
clear if they were female or male.
Hmm.
Their gender expression was kind of ambiguous.
Was they them? Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
probably Reed. It was probably Reed Bryce.
yeah. And so
Hmm.
my kiddo was transfixed. I think that was the first time that he had seen someone with a gender expression that maybe
Yeah.
like kind of could relate to. And
Yeah.
so it was shortly after that show that they like wanted to cut their hair like all the way
Mm.
short. And so we went and
Hmm.
cut his hair all the way short. And it
I
wasn't
love
until
that.
lockdown that they started using different pronouns and identifying
Yeah.
um, other than what they were assigned. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that's really cool that like
I think that's cool
that
too.
show
And
had that. Yeah.
it was really important, obviously that we support Reed in
Hmm.
their journey, and Reed helped us to understand, what was important, and what how to that it was okay to make a mistake, and what to do when we made one,
Hmm.
and how to support, like how to be an ally, how to support. And it every time we got someone in the cast who, brought a different background with them, and a different angle of diversity, it made us a better cast. It made us a better
Yeah.
show. We learned stuff together. And it was informing how we played. It was informing our word choices, and our like gender neutrality, and how to make sure that everyone felt safe and seen. And that was, important to us. It's important to us now.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you're continuing that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing that story with me. I love
Yeah.
that.
So so it sounds like, I mean, your journey has been like started with so much performance, and like what's neat is that
Mm,
you've have like such a balance of like continuing to perform but while still like teaching and engaging. And
yeah.
how are you able to keep that balance? Because I know like for me, I find that when I'm like working a full-time job, it's really hard to make space for the art and for
Yeah.
the passion.
Well, I rarely employ myself in an arena that isn't performance based.
Mm, yeah.
I Any place in which I am getting paid to run something, it's annoying that I'm don't I rarely these days get to just be an artist,
Yeah.
right? That's all everyone wants to do, right?
Right.
You just
Of
want to
course.
show up and be the art.
Yeah.
Like, that's the dream. Like, just show up and get to be the artist.
Yeah.
But that doesn't often pay what you want it to pay. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it
Mhm.
has, and that's a glorious day. But more often than not, you have to diversify your skill set so that you can make yourself either create things for yourself, right? You do it out
Mhm.
of necessity, and suddenly you're producing because you're creating your own art, and you're not waiting for somebody else to ask you to do something. Or you do it because you can see an opportunity to do a job, and you're like, oh, well, I think I can do this, or I have the skill set for this, or I do this for myself for no money, so why don't I do this for somebody else for money?
Yeah.
And there's skill sets that you learn different skill sets, you wear different hats, and then suddenly you start to get known for doing things well, being incredibly competent at things, and people want to pay you to do them. And you're like, sure, yeah, I'll let you pay me money to do things. So I have to go back to your original question. I rarely take a job that's outside the creative force.
Yeah.
And so even when I'm doing something, like I'm getting paid to produce something, I'm producing art, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
surrounding myself with artists, and there's always the crossover of, when you're talking to an artist, when you're talking to somebody who's never stepped on stage before in their life and they're producing
Oh,
something,
yeah.
and you're like, man, it is really hard to get you to see what this artist needs and why they
Yeah.
need this, right? To listen to an artist when they say that they need something. So you can tell it's just a very black and white. It's very binary.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in a room full of artists who are just wearing the different hats because out of necessity or out of, that's their job, you can still tell that they're artists. And so you start to talk to each other, you find each other's backgrounds, and suddenly, even though I'm producing, it's still an artistic process for me
Yeah.
where, you're still contributing. You're still having the conversations, the what if conversations. What if this? That doesn't seem to be working. Have you thought of this? Or why don't you try that? And you just throw the ideas out there, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you're in a room full of creatives and then they ask you to do stuff, and suddenly you're creating with someone and not just doing the producer hat or the marketing hat or the teaching hat. Suddenly
Mm.
you're performing because you've been asked to be creative in that way. And isn't that lovely?
That's magical. That sounds great.
Yeah, I feel I've worked really, really, really hard. There's no one who's ever met me who said that, who wouldn't say, "Oh, that Carrie-Ann, she's a workaholic." But I'm a workaholic because I work in the arts, and it's my heart and my passion,
Yeah.
and the people that I support, that I serve, are doing something magical. And so I feel a very privileged obligation to make sure that whatever I'm responsible for is done really, really, really well. And then on top of that, I usually have my own ideas, right? Things that
Mm-hmm.
I think like, oh, I envision this different, or I think this could be better, whether or not it's something artistic, or whether or not it's a process or a program that's being used, or building out an improv program, and pitching that, or
Yeah.
teaching corporate classes online, which are shockingly or unshockingly use a lot of my improv skills
Yeah.
for. So there's always, I don't think I've ever aligned myself with something that isn't in the arts.
And that sounds great, like being able to teach corporate class. It's so funny. So I one of my attempts to be able to have a flexible schedule, I got my notary license certification.
Yeah.
So I was doing mobile notary for a minute, and the training was online. And I mean, watching that notary do the online training, I was like, wow, she's good at this. Like, I could do this. This would be great. And
Yeah.
then she cut to, she's like, I was an actor for 20 something years, and now I'm a notary and blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. I was like, okay, okay, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah.
I could see that.
And there any well, first of all, as expansive as this town is, it's also incredibly small, right? Everyone
Yeah.
knows everyone.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
the um did you ever see the show at Second City called, oh shoot, what was it called? It was the one of the many Trump shows.
Oh,
Jillian Bellinger co-wrote and produced this show. Damn it, she's gonna kill me for not
I
remembering the name.
yeah,
Um,
I don't think I saw it, but
had the
I
word Trump in it.
remember, like,
Yeah,
yeah, uh-huh,
and it was like a real kitschy, real campy, and
uh-huh.
it had a very Star Trek, and Trump, and like, why can't I remember it? She's gonna kill me. Sorry, Jillian, I love you. And so that show was very successful, and but so we became friends, and then she is a corporate facilitator for a company called Hemsley Fraser, and so then when my world wasn't completely being sucked dry by Second City,
Uh-huh.
where they're
Yeah.
like, I was working 8 hours a week, blah blah blah, and she's like, oh well, now that you're not doing that, uh, can you come and teach for me? And I was like, oh, heck yeah. So you like, there's a whole audition process, and you like go through, and it's its own interesting process, but you have this all like learning based corporate courses that you teach and you facilitate, and you've got like 100 people on Zoom, that are signing up to learn everything from emotional intelligence or time management or,
Mm-hmm.
belonging in the workplace, or like it's just a
Yeah.
variety of corporate classes. And so I still do that. I still do that, probably anywhere between 2 to 4 times a month. I do that. And then also my current job, which is the working at the Youth Academy of Dramatic Arts, which I used to teach improv classes at years ago, and
Uh-huh.
then I got too busy and I stopped. And then they just kind of like randomly had classes here and there, so I started teaching again, maybe like 2021,
Yeah.
and their their program was just, I mean, it wasn't really fleshed out.
Okay.
So then I just kind of built a program and pitched it to the owners and said, like, here's some real juicy curriculum. Like, I can build this out for you. And um and so I pitched it and they loved it. And I started doing that, building out my program, bringing all of my teachers over from Second City and saying like, hey, I got a job for you, and going through that. So now all of these like really awesome teachers are teaching my curriculum over there. And then after about, I don't know, like maybe 8 months of doing that, then they asked me to be the executive director,
Oh.
and I have, and now I said yes, and that's what I'm doing now in addition to my improv program over there. So that has been, maybe going on a year and a half now of doing that.
Oh, wow.
And so and that is its own challenge. So that,
Yeah.
the, you know, those are some pretty big teams. There's about 100 employees, and
Yeah.
they do, the Youth Academy of Dramatic Arts is just a magical, magical place.
Yeah.
And they do musical theater, and their tagline is where kids find their voice. And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful program. And we've got around like 30 plus um, teaching artists who teach kids an entire show. So there's 3 locations, and each location is doing a different show.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say like right now, the one in West Hollywood is doing Frozen. And so we have an amazing person, Rebecca, who takes the script and kind of yada-fies it, and
Yeah.
for different levels. So we've got tots and pre-pri and then primary, and all the way
Oh.
up to our highest levels, which is our master program. And so each level is doing a version of Frozen. And
Oh, wow.
then, so the teachers go in and they all get together like once a week, like every Thursday, they'll get together. And the pod is the group of people who create the show. And they create all of the choreography and the blocking and the scene work. And then the pod teaches the entire 30 group of directors. And then each week they come in and they kind of break it down for each level. So they're meeting every
Okay.
week to discuss what is going to be taught that week and how it looks for each level. And they teach it between like 10 and 12 weeks, depending on what level you're on. So we've got you know, like 40 different casts of Frozen,
Holy cow.
rehearsing 7 days a week, right? And then we have an extraordinary set designer and lighting designer and sound designer, and they're coming together and they're bringing all of their talents together. And we have an extraordinary production value. So full lights, full sound, full sets, costumes. Orly is an extraordinary costume designer. Kelly makes these gorgeous props. Nick does these gorgeous sets, and Rebecca with her beautiful sound, and Dan is in charge of like that whole team. So it's just the highest level of production value.
Wow.
And then the kids get on that stage and they just kind of come to life. And it's magical. And my favorite thing, besides the fact that it's filled with like incredibly talented teaching artists who are just really beautiful souls and just trying to like do their art and find their way in this world. And I like being part of helping to shepherd that. But beyond that, I love the kids. The kids are on a journey. And we always
Yeah.
say that, if you walked into our theaters, you would think that this insane production value is what we do, that is our value, but it's not.
Yeah.
We do it because it looks great and
Yeah.
it's something that we're known for, but that's not where our values are. Our values are in the journey of the kids, making sure that everyone feels great about what they're doing. And if a kid at the end of the day stands on stage and they're singing at the top of their lungs off key, we are very happy because you felt the confidence and you found your voice and you're singing with all the confidence with nothing holding you back at the top of your lungs. And we have done our job. So we obviously have a goal, we have choreography, we have blocking, you have lines, all of that, and we want to get you there. But there, the there that we want to get you to is whatever your best is whatever your journey is. So if you're growing and you are having a good time, then we've done our jobs. So it's always a challenge of how you get them there. It's the end is not the everyone's perfect. That's never going to happen, but the journey is the goal, like getting you there, because the majority of those kids aren't going to be performers. The majority of those kids aren't Broadway bound. Some of them are freaking extraordinary. But the majority of those kids are going to go off into the world and be doctors and lawyers and accountants and moms and dads and just the infrastructure of our world.
Yeah.
And Yada makes them better people and makes them understand collaboration and work ethic and finding their own voice and becoming whoever that they're going to become. And that journey is gorgeous. That journey is why when someone gets up on stage and, there's a little boy who's playing Ursula, because our teaching artist sees that in them and sees that that's their greatest joy, that's what they want to do. And they're singing at the top of their lungs in their full stage makeup and their tentacles going crazy. And you watch them blossom and you're like, oh yeah, are we all crying in there? Of course we're crying in there. Of course we are.
Yeah.
It's pretty magical. And it's a building filled with some really magical people doing really magical stuff.
That is so cool. I did a lot of community theater growing up, and it was really fun. And I have the best memories of being there. And of course I have, like you said, I have so many friends from there whose intention was never to pursue this as like their lifelong dream. My best friend, she's a mechanical engineer, but she still has a band with her husband and her friends from work. And she works for like a big company, and they have like a company band that plays like, on lunchtime every once in a while. But
yeah, I bet they nerd out. I love it.
Oh yeah, they totally do. It's great. But I will say that those theater, that community theater was much more focused on getting the star up there, getting So I love to hear that you are encouraging people to just find their voice, and it's not about having the perfect show.
No, we do something called rotational casting, which we keep track of the roles that kids have gotten in. It's all internal. We label it internally. Each track is an A track, a B track, or a C track. And so, if I'm if I'm not the best singer, and which I'm not, if I'm not the best singer,
Yeah.
but I'm a pretty good dancer, and I'm a pretty good actor, where I fit, out in the real world might be, in a very particular lane. Like you're never going to,
Right.
find me, at the top of a musical. But
Right.
at Yada, with this rotational casting, we're always keeping an eye on what you've done. And if if you had a medium role and then, okay, then you had a small role. Okay, now it's time for you to have a big role. And it's not, even though if you some of the parents are like, my child needs the big role. It's not about that. It's
Yeah.
about what you learn in each track that you get. if you
Yeah.
if you have a lead role, let's say you're Ariel in Little Mermaid, that is a very specific skill set that you are going to either have or acquire, right? That's a
Yeah.
lead. You're not doing a lot of ensemble work per se. You're doing
Yeah.
a lot of lead work. That means you have a lot to carry on your shoulders. You've got a lot of solos.
Mm-hmm.
You're carrying a lot. You have to display a lot of leadership qualities, to be in that role. But if
Yeah.
you transition into like a small role, that means that you have multiple small roles, right? It's
Uh-huh.
pretty rare that you're like one tiny role. It's usually you've got like 3 or 4 roles and you're
Yeah.
on stage quite a bit. But that's like doing a sketch show. You've got so
Yeah.
many different entrances and exits. You've got so many different costume changes. That is an entirely different skill set that you're honing.
Yeah.
And it's more ensemble based, right? And
Yeah.
then a medium role is like you've probably got a lot of chunky character work, right? You're like Flotsam and Jetsam, or you're Flounder, or like, you're Sven in
Yeah.
Frozen. Like you got some juicy character thing that you're working on. So each track has its own lane and its own lesson to learn. So even though, some of the tears get shed, when
Yes.
they're like, I didn't get to be Ariel, kids want what they want. The heart wants what it wants. But there are lessons to be learned in
Yeah.
all the different tracks. And that's what rotational casting is all about. It's about making sure that you're learning all the lessons that are there to be learned in the beautiful and magical world that is live theater.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you, what advice would you have for someone who is trying to make some sort of creative field their career?
I would say, well, if you're young, like you're in college,
Yeah.
I would say, go where the go where it's happening. Like if you're in a small town, or you're, in a place that just isn't artistically inclined, go where it's happening. If that's a city, go. Just get there. I came here knowing no one and cried a lot the first year. I was just very
Yeah.
lonely the first year. um, just go get yourself there. And then once you're there, once you're in the arena where the stuff happens, then find your people, find your community, and then just start to create. And then
Mm,
diversify. You're not just one thing. No one is just one thing ever. And
yeah.
never let someone label you as one thing. Make sure that you understand who you are. And if you don't, then do what is referred to in the scientific world as sampling, right? Sampling is one of the
Mm,
best things we can do for our kids, for ourselves, is try as much as you can for as long as you're on this earth. Just keep trying new things. And it's a good way to find yourself. It's a good way to find your voice, find out what you're good at, find out what you like and dislike. Finding out what you don't like is sometimes more important than finding out what you like.
mm,
It
mm-hmm.
can it can help guide you. It can help turn you and make you a better decision maker, right?
Yeah.
And that sampling really also, as we get older, it helps our neuroplasticity, right? It helps us keep our brain sharp, always trying new things. They say that if you get good at something, because, people start to play like puzzles or Sudoku or something to keep their brain sharp. But the truth is, as soon as you get good at something, you should stop doing it and try something you're not good at. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the neuroplasticity. So as far as like being young and how do I get myself there, or how do I start? Get yourself there, move yourself there. Your youth is when you have such a gift of big swings. Take the big swings. Get yourself to a new city, get yourself to an audition, take a class, find your people, and just keep trying the new things and getting yourself in there, and volunteer for stuff that you don't know how to do. I don't know how to do that, but I'll try.
Yeah.
Teach me. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like that's how you learn new skills. That's how you like wiggle your way in to like, oh, Carrie-Ann ran the sound for that show. Ask her to do it again. Just volunteer for stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I love all that. That's some great advice. Okay. So my last question I always ask every guest is, what does making it mean to you now versus when you were younger? So what does success look like to you?
Success to me now, I think, equates to a couple of things. One would be learning, growth. Have I learned something? Am I learning something? Am I around people who challenge me, who know more than me? Or is my skill set challenged? Am I working on something in a particular arena? That is success to me. Growth is success to me.
Yeah.
And also autonomy. If I'm a big ensemble person, I love creating an ensemble and being in an ensemble, whether or not that means that I'm the boss and I'm running things. I do it in an ensemble. Everyone's in like a group or a team. But autonomy means to me that I have some creative say. I have over my life, over my time, over my efforts. So if I don't have some sort of autonomy over my schedule, over my money, over my outlets, then I'm not happy. Autonomy is a lot to me. And I'm sure that comes from some deep childhood place that my therapist could peel back the onion layers on. But I need security.
Yeah.
While at the same time, I need autonomy, and I need those things to be equal. So that corporate life that I fell into provides me with security, and working my way up to the high level in that corporate world provides me with security and the autonomy, right, to be a creative force. And so for me, success, having the autonomy to be a creative force, feels successful to me. And I'm still growing so much as a human being all the time that growth and autonomy to be a creative force feels like success to me now.
Yeah.
Back then, when I was like, 20 something, just getting any job felt like success. Just like any job. I got cast in as the princess at the Excalibur show. Like success, great, fantastic. Somebody's going to pay me money. Like honestly, that was it. I didn't care. Like traveling. If somebody paid me to be creative and to travel, like bada bing, baby, I was like, yes, I will go to China and be in your variety show because I get to go to China. Like I traveled the world on someone else's dime. That felt like success to me back then. It still feels like success. If anyone wants to hire me to travel anywhere, I'm game. I'm such an adventure junkie. I am 100% game to travel anywhere. So that just any job in my youth felt like success. And now I'm very picky, right? Like my time is valuable. My skill set is valuable. And I no longer feel like I would ever fall into underselling myself.
Well, I love the idea of like if anybody wants to pay for your travel, you're game. I miss traveling. It's been a while.
I'm game.
I really appreciate that you have found this niche of the balance of the steadiness of a job and then creativity, and like it just sounds like kind of all along you've been on this track to where you can teach youth and help the youth find their voices, and clearly you're good at it, and congratulations on this executive director
Thank
position with
you.
Yada. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
That's
It's huge. It's
That's
huge.
so,
And honestly,
it's
like
great.
just the fact that my improv program is still there and thriving on all three locations. And then on top of the executive director job, like remember earlier when I was like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, diversify, like
Yeah.
it just happens. it just happens. Like, you get into an arena and then suddenly like all the hats just start piling on and you're like, well, here I am again. But I mean, it's what I do. It's what I love.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I know it took
Lisa,
ages.
thank you for having me. What a
When I
joy.
saw you at, oh my gosh,
Hold on,
Transparent.
Yes, Transparent. Thank
When
you.
I saw
The
you-
live,
yes.
the live theater show.
Yeah, when I saw you at the live theater show Transparent, I was like, okay,
Where
this
was
is
that?
like,
Was that at the Amundsen, or was that at
the little one? Is it the Center Theater? The little that they don't.
It's the Mark Taper Forum?
Yeah, they don't use it anymore, right?
Well, they use it for like specialty projects, special occasion, which is such a, I don't know. I think they're just like, they're saving some money to like, this is just my guess, but I think they're just putting a pin in it and putting their resources, in one thing to make one thing successful to come back to it. So they're doing like specialty projects and events and stuff out of there. But God, please come back. The Mark Taper Forum is really just my favorite performance space of all time in Los Angeles. It is just such a beautiful space. So yes, but you're right. That is where we saw each other.
Yeah. When I saw you there, I was like, oh my gosh. Because I think I had just reached out to you, or like maybe a month before, like a couple months before. And so then when I ran into you there, I was like, oh, there's Carrie-Ann. See?
Yeah.
I knew that we were supposed to talk.
That's right. It's destined. It took us forever, but it was destined.
And of course, my kid is like, oh my God, Mom, you're so embarrassing.
So humiliating, Mom. Stop it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Carrie-Ann.
Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. You can find Carrie-Ann on Instagram or Facebook at Rockin Awesome Improv. That's at Rockin, no G, Rockin Awesome Improv. And you can catch their shows every Saturday at 11 a.m. And you guys, it's only $5. So if you have kids, even if you don't have kids, it's worth checking out. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a sweet little review. You know it helps others find the podcast, and I would very much appreciate it. If you're really enjoying the show and you want to help cover the hosting costs and maybe give me a little bit of extra funds so I can hire an editor, which would mean releasing more episodes sooner, then you can follow the link to buy me a coffee in the show notes. Subscribe to the show wherever you listen, and please share the show with your friends. We need that word of mouth. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at Making It After 40, the number 40. And to catch up on what I'm doing when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Rodriguez. Thank you all for listening, and have an excellent week.